Welcome to the Financial Dads Podcast with Paul Fagan and Jody Fisher. This is the podcast for all dads who want to succeed with life's topics, especially related to family and finances. Now here's my dad, Paul Fagan.
Hey Jody, how you doing?
Hello, Paul. How are you?
I'm doing well. Still doing fantastic. It's been
I hear the hesitation in your voice there. This has been a weird week.
Yeah, well, I gotta say, Jody, we've done, and just for everyone out there, we try not to wing it when it comes to the podcasts. If you listen to the first three of them, yeah, we did. But we have a rhythm that Jody and I have in terms of putting our thoughts together, putting our notes together. So we want to have some semblance of order and some semblance of what we're going to talk about before we talk about it on the podcast. And even though our audience is small, we're grateful for our audience, and we try to be as prepared as possible. But this week, Jody, man, I looked. You put a lot of notes into our shared document. I gotta say,
I have many thoughts this week.
I said I cannot be late for this podcast because Jody is ready to go, and I thought that I was prepared. But man, I love what you put in, and so we're gonna just jump right in, right? So the topic, of course, life in the age of coronavirus, how to prepare for life financially. But first, let's talk about some news we saw this week. So the two story headlines that we picked are fitting for the climate that we're in. The first one is from Fool.com, and it talks about coronavirus and your finances, how to react. And it had a lot of good things in here. Don't sell your investments out of fear. Don't overbuy items in prep, although when you go to the grocery stores, at least where I am, man, people are not adhering to that rule. Put some emergency plans in place, take advantage of low interest rates, which is an odd thing to talk about, but maybe there's something there to it. I guess if you want to take advantage of the crisis, you could refinance your mortgage. Boost your emergency fund, which quite frankly, I don't know how you do that if people are asked to stay home and people out there that have jobs that that don't allow them to take off from work. I don't know how you boost at this time. I think in fact you have to tap into that emergency fund a little bit. Keep some cash on hand, and look for opportunities to cut those expenses, and then just hopefully remember that this will pass. So, Jody, what was your take on this article?
I think it's a worthwhile article to have written and put down, on our screens here this week. Some really good advice in here. I kind of scratched my head too at the refinancing your mortgage piece, but I guess if you've got some time on your hands this week and you're home from work or whatever, and you want to look into refinancing your horrible mortgage rate, okay, have at it.
Yeah, and I think that the second story, which is from Forbes.com, what coronavirus means for your money, it's really along the same lines. And the thing that keeps jumping out at me that I want to talk about is it talks about in both articles, it references your stock portfolio. And the one analogy that people I've heard say in the past is the only people who get hurt on a roller coaster are the people that jump off mid-ride. Meaning you're going to have the ups and downs of the stock market, your retirement fund, and I believe it was Dave Ramsey that usually says that little bit of information. But I've heard too many stories after 9/11, after other major world issues where the sky is falling, people liquidate their portfolio of stocks, say, I'm out of it. They sell at the absolute low, and within a year or less, or maybe a little bit more, the portfolio would have climbed back to where it was. So historically, the stock market bounces back. It's resilient. It's going in the direction of public sentiment. And I really do think that this week was no exception, right? We had drops of 2,000 points, then up 1,500 points, then down 2,000 points. So overall, it's down. But as we get further and further along and hopefully get out of this crisis that we're in, we should be okay. So I do really insist that people should make sure that they're keeping track of looking at their portfolio, but don't touch it if you can. Jody, what were your thoughts on this article?
Fully agreed. Yeah. And you can read the article posted on our Facebook page. Lots of people will probably have a little extra time on their hands this week. In this modified work schedule world that we're entering or we're in now. So check this one out and use some of those tips that they provide.
Yep, absolutely. And I think that the other thing that jumped out at me was both articles talk about bolstering or starting an emergency fund. And I got to be honest with you, Jody, I don't know if it's the time to do that. I don't know how you would do that, first of all, if your income is going to be affected. And second of all, I think there's other expenses that may come into play. So I kind of disagree with those parts of the article. I think I would say that don't spend money unnecessarily and try to conserve your money, but to sit there and try to squirrel away money at this point, I don't know how much value it's going to be if you have to live on that money, right?
Yeah,
whatever situation you're in.
I agree. I think this is the week to be saying, thank goodness I have an emergency fund. Thank goodness that I have some money that I can tap into if you're lucky enough to have smart enough to have done that historically. Because this is the week, and we're not talking about stocking up on toilet paper. We're talking about all the expenses of life. And this is the week that I think you're going to have to tap into some of that cash just to pay for things that, wouldn't normally come up. And we're going to get into those in the podcast.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, I think that we have so many things going on that we could talk about today. It's going to get very interesting, all the different pieces that we have going on. And so, I think I'm just going to jump into it. I think what a difference a week makes.
What a difference a day made.
Last week, the stores were fine. This week, I stopped in the grocery store before going to the gym, and there's barely anything left on the shelves. Yesterday, I spent an inordinate amount of money on groceries, the biggest bill I ever had, because it was sort of like a frenzy, a controlled frenzy. Wasn't like a Walmart on Black Friday, but it was pretty frenzied, right? A lot of things not on the shelves. So I fell into the rhythm of trying to figure things out. And so for me, I'm thankful and grateful that I've been able to put away money in the past. And because I have my emergency funds and because I have the way I've structured my life, I think that I'm going to be able to weather this storm. But, on the personal front, my kids are home, my wife's home, I'm home, we're all working from home, we're all straining the bandwidth of the cable router. But I really do feel extremely lucky because there's so many people out there that do not have this luxury whatsoever. They have jobs, they have to be in the office, they have no emergency fund. I don't know what people are doing, and it's so early right now, but I gotta imagine that it's incredibly tough out there, and I don't know what the result is going to be, 2 weeks from now, 2 months from now, 2 years from now from this, right? So, Jody, what are your thoughts when it comes to the crises and how your family's prepping?
Yeah, I have a lot of thoughts about this. I'm typically not a worrier. I typically try to say that I control what I can and I don't worry about the rest. But that said, and it's easy to say this now, but I really did see this coming. It was just a matter of when. And I naturally operate that way. It's how I think about my business. I think about, what the next step in the process is. There were two events earlier this week that told me that we were at critical mass for a full-scale shutdown, and that there was no turning back. One was when the NBA canceled their games. And who knew that they would even consider canceling NBA games? It's just something that I'm not a huge sports fan, so it wasn't really anything that was on my radar.
It didn't affect my life one bit.
It didn't affect my life, but it was kind of like, wow, the NBA canceled their game. So it's like, when has that ever happened? So that's weird. And the writing on the wall for me was when, and this is a very personal experience, when Amazon Fresh groceries went from a 1-day to a 5-day delivery turnaround time. That said to me that there was a disruption in the supply chain. And that Amazon has the trucks to deliver the stuff. What that said was they don't have the stuff. They don't have the things to put inside the trucks. And items kept disappearing out of my wife's online shopping cart. And so I said to her, I'm not panicking, but this is the time we go out and we buy some stuff because
you
stuff
didn't go to the store, did you, Jody?
We did.
Wow. I'm just joking.
My wife went out.
I know so many friends that you guys
yes.
are doing pantry, and I haven't done it. We've talked about this on previous podcasts. I don't know why I haven't done it, and sorry for interrupting, but I haven't done it. So for me, me and my daughter, we made a trip yesterday, and she was my busy little bee, and we loaded up as whatever we could. And the store yesterday was not as bad as the store I had gone to earlier that day in the morning. So the one grocery store I went to was like decimated. The spirit of the store was just broken. And then when I went in the afternoon, late in the day with my daughter, they had a bunch of stuff. So, and we loaded up on the common things that we thought we could put away in our basement: cereals and peanut butter and all the stuff, pasta, all the stuff people have talked about. But it is interesting. But Jody, I cut you off. I'll let you jump back in. But yeah, we made the physical trip to the store, and hopefully we're okay from it. So
yeah. No, I think we survived too, and my wife did a great job of stocking up on all that stuff. But it was that point where I knew that we had to get ready, and so what I mean by that is we had to prepare for things to get disrupted. And I think if you're a responsible dad, you've got to do that stuff. You've got to be ready for the possibility that food becomes unavailable, or that schools and businesses are going to close, or that transportation and movement might even be curtailed. You have to get ready to not have access to anything that is outside your home. And that's the approach that I took, without panic, with preparation. So you do what you have to do, right? You buy your food, you refill your prescriptions, you grab yourself a full tank of gas. This is kind of like looking at a weather map and seeing a snowstorm or a hurricane coming. Okay, what happens if we get disrupted for a few days? You've got to prepare, right? I also did things like I made sure that I had my remote login at work, right? And I told my kids, bring home anything you need to bring home from school. It's sort of basic disaster preparedness 101. Because the what you want to prepare for is if you get thrown a curveball, right? And so most likely thing that might happen, nothing, right? Everything might be fine. It might be crazy for a couple days and a run on the grocery store, but everything kind of evens out. And, at least we have front loaded all of our shopping into from a couple of weeks into 1 week, and then our budget evens out over the course of the month. So there's no panic involved in here. You're just kind of prepping up front and making sure, just in case everything goes south, and if every grocery store closes and every gas station closes and every pharmacy closes, we're still ready. That's what you have to do as a dad. And so where are we today? We're exactly where I predicted we would be on Monday. My kids' schools are closed. My wife's school is closed. My business remains open, but I'm TBD as to where I'm working. Maybe I'll be in the office. Maybe I'll be at home. But we have food, we have medicine, and we have a sound game plan. And I slept really, really well last night, knowing that all this stuff was in place and that I had done my job as a dad.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. I mean, and I think that for me, elaborating a little bit more on my current situation, I'm going to be working from home, and my wife as well, till further notice. Our kids are in schools where they've started remote learning programs, so as of Monday, they're going to be remote learning. So they've dug deep into there. I've spent an inordinate amount of money, and I told myself I wouldn't panic. And I don't know if it's much more. I don't think it was panic. I think it was opportunity. And maybe it gave me peace of mind. I don't think I was panicked, but I was probably worried. And so when I started seeing everything, I started doing my own runs to the store, and I did, I did a combination of buying stuff in the store in the last 48 hours. I've placed as many Amazon random orders as I could for stuff. If I couldn't find toilet paper, I bought tissues, right? Whatever gets the job done, right? So
run out in the backyard and grab some leaves.
That's right. And I bought some extra espresso packs. And now, really, first world problems. Espresso packs for my Tassimo machine. Yeah, throw me off the air for this. Yeah. This is just elitist talk. But no, once again, thankful and grateful that I can do it. Right. The other thing I did this morning is my wife and I enjoy, and I'm gonna. It's kind of an informal plug. We enjoy the Chicago deep dish pizza place called Giordano's, and at the gym I decided to order a 6-pack of their pizzas. Now it's kind of over the top, 6 pizzas are hefty price tag getting them from Chicago to New York, so you pay a decent amount for each pizza, dollar cost average. But I figure we're not going to go out to dinner for a while, right? And I wanted something to look forward to, so we'll have 6 nights where me and my wife will just be able to share this pizza and relax and kind of enjoy something. So I think for us, all the things that I've done in the past, 10 years, 12 years, 15, maybe all my life, right? Putting money away, paying off the mortgage, all the things we've talked about, I think has prepped me for this moment. I have a generator attached to the house. Like, my house is probably one of the most prepared houses in the county, right? Like, I have a lot of things ready to go. So we got some food in us. We have jobs that we are allowed to work from home without an issue. Our kids are going to be able to remote learn. If there's a power issue, I can lean on my generator. So I think I'm doing okay. And that's how I look at it. And once again, when I go to the grocery store, my life is groomed for this situation. I go, I buy, I don't owe. And that's the key. I don't put it on a credit card, only put it on the credit card just to pay it off at the end of the month. But I know that whatever I buy in the grocery store, to your point, it'll smooth out, right? But I could take $400 for 1 week, put it in there, and have that food put aside. So I think for us, my life lessons learned so far is like a good Boy Scout. Be prepared. You need to be prepared. And you need to treat yourself a little bit. And that's why I brought up the Giordano's pizza story. But Jody, what are your thoughts when it comes to kind of the way the public, the government, everyone is handling this crisis? Because I know you have a better viewpoint on this than I do. And for me, I know we went back and forth, and there's a lot of things, and I think that panic set in. There was a lot of things said. Now things are being retuned and readjusted and readdressed, and I think it's going to be an ongoing battle for learning. But what is your take when it comes to handling the virus and dealing with the government and dealing with the school system, anything that comes to your head when it comes to this outside of the financial piece?
Look, this is not a time to panic. Panic always makes you make bad decisions. And you can see evidence of that all around us right now. So nobody should be panicking. But it's also no time to dismiss good, sound, scientific advice. There's a lot written online about this, and we just felt obligated to reiterate some of it. You've got to listen to the CDC on the health piece. You got to listen to your local Department of Health. You got to do what they advise. This is simple stuff. Wash your hands. Wash your hands properly. Cough and sneeze into your elbow. Keep people away from people who are sick. We got to say this too. You got to watch out for the elderly, right? We all have someone in our lives who's older, who may be in their 70s or their 80s or their 90s, or we might have people in our lives who have compromised immune systems or compromised lung functions, right? Those are the people who are really at risk here because this virus attacks the lungs. So you've got to watch out for those people, and you've got to this new phrase that we've invented, but it's the truth, this social distancing, right? You've got to keep some distance between you because that's how this virus gets spread. And those people with those compromised immune systems and those compromised lung function, those are the people who are really at risk here. Premature babies, kids with asthma, sickle cell, congenital heart, all that kind of stuff. You've got to be careful. Those people are really at risk. This is really serious for them because, we usually keep politics out of this, but here's the deal. We've got a president who doesn't believe in science. He lies regularly. He lied on Friday about Google creating a website. He's more interested in how this makes him look than actually fighting this thing. He said on live TV that he won't take responsibility for this. This is a total abdication of his responsibility as the leader of our country. And you've got state TV in the form of Fox News who's brainwashing people into thinking that this is a Democratic hoax. This is not a hoax. This is not BS. This is real life. People are dying. Look at Italy. You've got 1,200 people dead in Italy because they didn't take this seriously. If we don't take this seriously, it's going to be worse. And we've just got to go at this in a really sober and serious way, and that means taking the advice of the scientists and the doctors and the health professionals and not listening to the blowhards who won't take responsibility for gutting the CDC and firing all the health professionals 3 years ago who could have prevented this. So there's my little political rant. Thanks for coming to my TED Talk. But the main thing is we cannot panic, but we also we cannot think of this as business as usual. And just because you might not be sick right now or anybody isn't sick right now doesn't mean that that's going to change. And I saw this written earlier this week online, and I thought this was great. in terms of how we approach this right now at this moment in time. We need to overreact to this so it doesn't get worse. People like to say, that everyone made a big deal about that thing and it turned out to be nothing. Yeah, the reason it turned out to be nothing is because we made a big deal out of it. We take extraordinary measures to fix something, and it gets fixed and fixed fast. So we've got to do the same thing here. And if we buckle down and do this right, we will get through it.
Well, Jody, all well said, and as always, I like to jot down some points, right? So for me, you might have heard the garage door opening and closing in the background. I think that was my daughter going outside.
I will take a glazed with sprinkles, please.
I'm not sure if it was a donut run or it was the basketball, but we are authentic. That is one thing for sure. We are authentic. So, one of the other things that you hit it on the head was around the government, and I have some friends on Facebook that are diehard anti-Governor Cuomo, and those of you that know Governor Cuomo from New York, a lot of people, for whatever reason, there are people that love him, people that hate him, but the people that hate him, this week there are spots in the Facebook feeds where they are praising him for the way he's stepped up and handled business. So I thought that was interesting, that there are people that are all the way on the other side of him that are now saying, you know what, he's actually doing a pretty good job. I don't know your thoughts on that, Jody. I know we're not political, but I just thought that was an interesting tidbit in terms of people are recognizing that New York is stepping up and taking somewhat of control. And it's not perfect. None of this is going to be perfect. But
because you know what the difference is there, Paul? Aside from political views, it's about honest, credible communication. And you've got two polar opposites, I think, right now this week. And we're going to step away from policy here, and we're just going to talk about the people who are delivering the message. You've got a guy like Governor Cuomo who is delivering unfiltered, honest, credible communication. And you've got a President Trump who is not credible in a single way. His entire life, never mind just the time he's been president, his entire life he's been a con man. And so you don't believe a word that comes out of his mouth. So now when it comes to a crisis like this, and he stands up and he talks, I mean, never mind the lies that he tells, the blatant, bald-faced lies that he tells, even when he tells the truth, you don't believe him. Because you can't, because he's never uttered a true word in his life.
Yep. I mean, I guess this is where I'm at a loss.
Credibility. It's about credibility. Yep. That's what it is. It's credibility.
And people who know me personally, I don't get into politics, so my opinions are very loosey goosey. I try to stay away, and that kind of leads me to what I was going to say next. Is I'm trying to stop watching the news a little bit and kind of tune out. I try to watch it a little bit, but I know people are watching it constantly. Jody, I don't know. Are you on the tube watching everything going through?
Well, I kind of have to be, because it's my business, right? I deal with the news business. I deal with the news media in my business. So I have to be tuned in. And I was actually very busy. I represent some healthcare professionals. And so this week was a very busy week for us, because we were out there getting those health professionals on the news to share medical information, scientific information, deliver options and care possibilities to people. So yeah, I'm constantly attuned to the news. That said, I do try to filter out some of the BS, the chatter. Let's say the chatter that's out there. But when you tune into a briefing from the President of the United States, hoping to get some information on what the federal government is going to do to help stem this crisis, and you get a series of lies, specifically about Google building a website. Google's not building a website to track coronavirus. There's a great website on Johns Hopkins, if you haven't seen it yet, that tracks the global spread. That's terrific. The president brought up a bunch of his corporate friends to do little PSAs for their companies. Just an absolute unmitigated disaster.
Yep. No, I think that a lot of people are nervous and scared. It was visible after he spoke initially this week. The markets just went into free fall. All kinds of circuit breakers on the markets. So they had to stop trading to kind of give it a breather. That's how fast things were falling. So, I think that all in all, hopefully we can all begin to move forward, and hopefully we'll be able to dig a little deeper and get through this crisis together. But let's see how it goes, right? But I think for us, a couple of things you hit upon before, Jody, the local pizza shop, the local barbers and hairstylists, all these people that rely on having people in the public at their place. It's going to be tough, right? And I think a lot of these businesses were already on the edge in terms of not having enough savings. So it's going to be interesting to see how long this crisis lasts and how long these businesses will be able to weather those storms. On another note, though, it was funny. I was at the gym this morning, and I had a lively conversation with a young lady there, and we talked about how many people she has seen not washing their hands after in the bathroom or coming
this
into
week.
The gym. Yeah, this week. And it reminded me of a story. I used to work with a gentleman at a job years ago. He kept a piece of paper underneath his keyboard at work, and he had a list of everybody he caught in the men's room not washing their hands. And this is way before Corona. This is way back, right? So I always laugh when I go back to that thought, because he would pull out this list and write it, and then he would put it back under his keyboard. And finally I had to ask him, like, what are you doing? He said, oh, yeah, that's when I'm in the bathroom. I see someone not washing their hands. I don't want to shake their hand. I put their name on my list. So it was very, very interesting. But I think the net result is people wash your hands, right? I mean, I think that's the key. And so, make sure you're washing your hands, keeping that hygiene going. So I think we'll start jumping into some of the topics, and we hit upon a bunch of them. But it's worth it to kind of go through them methodically, because I think they're important. And they tied a lot to the finances, right? So how do we pay for items in this crisis, right? Cash, savings, credit card, building a budget to pay down the expenses. So for me, like I said earlier, thankful, grateful, I'm able to afford to weather this storm. For those of you that are having a tough time, my humble opinion, don't overspend, but don't let finances get in the way of your well-being. So if you need to lean on the credit card and you have a plan to pay that credit card off at the end of this crisis, I think that's okay. Buy with the payment to pay this thing in mind at the end. What is your thought when it comes to how do we pay for these items, these emergency items that are coming up?
Yeah, I agree. This is the week when you should have an emergency fund. This is the emergency, right? Or one of many emergencies you might run into.
Yep.
It is raining, right? So this is when you're thankful that you built up an emergency fund. Now, it's great if you can tap into that, and you should. We are, right? And it's not thousands. You're talking about a couple $100, right? But it's a couple $100 that's off the budget. Okay, you tap into the emergency fund. That's why it's there. If you don't have one, you got to lean into that credit card. Fine. As you're swiping the credit card, not to buy 10 bottles of wine, but to buy food for your kids. You make sure you also develop a plan to pay it off. Get that down on paper. If you don't have a written budget, this is the week to sit down and start writing a written budget that includes building an emergency fund. This is one of these come to Jesus moments where you need to get your act together if it's not together already. Like I said, and this is not boastful, I am thrilled that I have a written budget in place, and I know exactly what I can spend, exactly what I'm paying, and everything is just still working like clockwork, to the point where we're very lucky, and we can afford to have a cleaning crew come into our house every week to do some basic cleaning, right? When my wife and I just talked this morning about are we going to have the cleaning crew come in on Monday? We decided that, and this is a mom and pop shop. This is a couple ladies, right, who come in to clean the house. We decided that we're not going to have them come into the house because we don't want to cross-pollinate, shall we say, any germs or whatever. But we're still going to pay them the regular weekly payment because we figure a whole lot of people are going to cancel on them. And so we're still going to pay them. And the money is budgeted, so we're okay to pay them. And we think that that's really important. It's a minor thing, but that's the kind of thing that we're going to be practicing as we go through this.
Got it. I was just still jotting down. Should have not bought 12 bottles of wine. No, that was very good, Jody. I think
Depends on what kind of wine, Paul.
Yeah.
It depends.
That's very cool. That you're taking others into consideration. I think that is genuine, and I think that is so cool. It goes back to when I went to the store. And maybe that leads into some of these other topics. But stocking up on food. How much is too much? What can you afford? Accessing the local food pantries for those who need it. So those are some of our discussion topics. Like I said before, we have a big shelf in our basement. Once again, thankful, grateful. I'll say that a number of times during this podcast. I'm able to stock it with cereals. I'm able to stock it with some canned goods. I'm reminded of when my first trip to the store, I noticed that a gentleman, and I don't know the backstory, he must have had 43 cans of corn in his shopping cart. And I said, what are you going to do? I'm saying to myself, what are you doing with all that corn? Now, maybe it's for another cause, but I'm picturing the guy stocking 42 cans in his basement. So
did he also have 42 rolls of toilet paper? Because he might need those after
No,
the
that's
corn.
all out. And for those of you out there, Google Australian toilet paper fight. You will see what humanity has come to. It's on YouTube, and I won't say any more, but Google Australian toilet paper fight, and you will see what is transpiring. It's sad. It's very sad. For me, I think I'm trying to balance it. I'm trying to buy things that I'll eventually eat that have a long shelf life. All the common things that you think of, long expiration dates, etc. I know some of it's part of the cost of doing business, and maybe a small amount of it might get tossed. But even before this, we have I'm going back in time, Jody, to one of the first ones. We have a whole podcast just talking about grocery shopping.
Yes, we do.
And we talk about this. We talk about buying things in bulk that won't go bad. So if you're going to the store and you're going to buy, 50 pounds of oranges, keep in mind that those are probably going to go bad. Where if you buy, 10 jars of peanut butter, well, over time you'll probably eat it, right? So just be mindful of what you're buying. Stock up, and I don't know if there's probably a limit on how much, but at least for me, I'm trying to buy at least 2 weeks out. What's your take on stocking up on food, Jody?
Same thing, and I think I described it this way earlier. We're just front loading our grocery buying for now to make sure that if there's a disruption in the supply chain, which I think there already is, that we don't run dry. It's that simple, and I go back to doing our jobs as dads, being prepared. If you have a good game plan, you're not going to get surprised. And even when you get thrown a curveball, it'll be all the much easier to recover from it.
Yep, that makes sense. And I think this leads into another topic, unplanned expenses, right? Childcare. What if you have to work but your kid's school is shut down? Do you have someone come to your house? I can't even imagine, Jody. I have the perfect storm of once again thankful and grateful for the way my situation is. But I know there's a lot of people out there that have to go to the office. They have to go to work. They have to do these things. They have kids at home that maybe the kids' schools are closed. And I know it's a big debate going back and forth, massive debate, right? Teachers want the schools to be closed. Then you have parents that once the kids are home, the knockdown effect is going to be insane, right? In terms of if you're a parent, single mom, single dad, 2 kids, you have a blue collar gig where you have to be at your work, otherwise you don't get paid, and they close your school down. I can't imagine. I cannot imagine. And so, Jody, I don't even know what the only thing I could say for unplanned expenses is try to remain calm, rely on your credit, rely on friends and family, try to figure it out. But I honestly, I'm sort of tapped on advice here because maybe you have some better advice than me for some of these unplanned expenses, especially when it focuses on family and childcare.
Yeah, well, the expenses are one thing, but just the mechanics of it. If you go to work and you drop your child off either at school or at a daycare, the school or the daycare closes. Okay, your kid is home. You have to stay home. Okay, but now you want to be able to go back to work, so you want to hire somebody to come to your house, but you can't have somebody come to your house because of the situation that we're currently in. What the hell do you do? I'm kind of tapped here too, and we're not in this situation. That's why I go back to this is a major disaster with huge implications far beyond what anybody has apparently ever considered before. We are in. I feel like we are in uncharted territory here. And again, I'm saying this. I'm not panicking. I am not panicking. I'm being practical. What do you do? This is really a tough one there, and I think everybody's going to have to invent their own scenario.
Yeah, and once again, I have a sign that hangs over my desk at home, and it is what it is. So the chips are going to fall where they may, and I like to think of it as, and I prioritize this when in my work life, I have to stack rank the prioritization of whatever I'm doing. So there's always going to be conflict in terms of what do you do, what do you tackle. So unfortunately, right, you may have to, you can't, if you have a 3-year-old and you're a working dad or mom and they close the school, you're home. That's it, right? You can't leave the 3-year-old home, right? And you can't bring the 3-year-old to work for whatever reason. Like, that's your stack rank, right? Like, I can't leave the kid in the car while I go to work, right? Which some people will probably wind up doing. But I think that for me, it comes down to stack ranking the prioritization. And I think, so it's a tough decision, I feel, for anyone out there who has to deal with that situation. And I hope that things go well for them in that situation. Kids off from school, right? Maintaining structure, remote learning. How do we talk to kids about the coronavirus? I know me personally, my kids are out of school. They're going to start their remote learning journey shortly, starting on Monday. The party will be over on Monday, so to speak, and the kids will have to buckle down and do their thing. What is your take when it comes to all these different pieces, Jody, in terms of kids off from school, and how do we handle their day-to-day activities while they're home?
Yeah, I work with a pediatrician as one of my clients, and she's offering advice. And her catchphrase is that this is not a snow day, this is a serious situation, and you can't treat it as okay, we're off of school. Because never mind that the kids are going to be involved in distance learning, which some may do that, but you can't even have play dates, right? You can't even have kids over the house because the health professionals are recommending that you still practice that social distancing, that you don't mix and mingle the kids because they're kids and they trade their germs, and we can't be trading germs right now. We got to keep everybody nice and healthy if they are healthy, and if they aren't healthy, then we got to keep them away from everybody else. So this is like I said, new and uncharted territory. Certainly for us as parents, and we're going to take this day by day. But if the kids are off of school, some of the advice that she offers is, maintain some structure. Don't just make it like Xbox all day kind of thing. I saw that Disney Plus put Frozen 2 on the app, the streaming app, 3 months early, which I think is a brilliant marketing move by them. But what happens after you've watched Frozen 2 7 times? And I was very excited to see that the latest Star Wars movie came on Apple TV 3 days early last night. But even though I hated it, but I digress. Maintain some structure when the kids are at home, and if you're lucky enough to, be working from home or be able to be at home with the kids, and you don't have the added problem of the childcare. Recommended that from the pediatricians and the healthcare professionals that you maintain some structure there, and throttle on, throttle off with the remote learning, with the fun, with the going outside. You still got to get the kids outside if you can get them outside, because being outside is okay. It's just mixing and mingling the kids.
Yep, that makes sense, right? And I think I usually don't promote some of these things, but on social media, someone had posted a great little one-pager, and we'll post it on the website. It was the COVID-19 daily schedule for the kids, right? Wake up, morning walk, academic time, creative time, chore time, quiet time. I thought it was very interesting, so we'll post that to the site and make sure people have access to that and take a look at it. Just our little passing some information along, just like we try to do with all these different things. Working from home. So for me, my poor little cable router is stretching at the limits between my wife being online, I'm being online. My kids are now going to have to be online for work, for their school. But it's working. I've my job was very heavily dependent, and so was my wife, on VPN, virtual private networks and remote access. And so for us, it was business as usual. We were working from home with some level of frequency, and now we've increased the frequency. But for those of you who are not used to working from home, and Jody, we have some mutual friends that can't even imagine being home and working from home, right? Just because that's not their job, and most of their job they got to be at work, and they just love their job so much they have no problem getting into the job, right? But this might be new uncharted territory for them, right? Where they have to, what happened to my remote login? How do I connect to my email again? So Jody, what are your thoughts when it comes to working from home?
I think working from home has a lot of challenges. It sounds like you're in your PJs all day, putting your feet up. But it is challenging when you're by yourself, and even more challenging when you've got your whole family around you. I think you need to do the same thing in terms of defining, a space or a time for work and a space or a time for play. As much structure as you can possibly bring to the home environment with all of that is probably going to serve you best.
Yeah, and that makes a lot of sense, right? I mean, I think that you really do have to, and my wife, I think we're both pretty good at it at this point. We share a room in the house that we call the home office, and you see it sometimes in the videos in the background, and it's just exactly what you would think it would be. It's just a pile of papers with computers in between, and it's the catch-all room, and it's by no means a fancy room, but we have it set up in such a way where, I have my side of the room, and she has her side. It's almost like I'm dating myself now, when Greg and Peter, and they cut the room in half on the Brady Bunch. It's sort of that way. My wife has one side of the room, and I have the other side of the room. And
do you sleep in bunk beds too, Paul?
Not quite, but it is funny when I talk about this, the more I think about it, because my only rule for the house is, please don't put anything on my workspace, right? Like I can't let the clutter. I need my workspace to be what it is, right? But I guess that's for another podcast, right? But anyway, I think we'll touch upon the last topic, which we talked about at the beginning, and that's the stock market. A lot of us who are listening to this podcast, who listen to the podcast, I personally, we have retirement funds. We've talked about this over and over again, and do not liquidate, hold tight, always a 5-year outlook. You want to make sure that you have the money in place, and don't touch it. Now, once again, emergencies, worst case scenarios, I go back to unplanned expenses. You're a single dad, you got to work, you have a 3-year-old, the kid's home from school or daycare, you can't do it. Maybe you do have to tap the retirement fund. If I stack rank it, I got money that was for my retirement, but I have to feed my family. I have to feed my kid or my kids. They're home from school. I'm going to stay home. I'm going to tell my job I need a month off, and hopefully they'll let me have my job back, and I'm going to lean into my retirement fund. I'm going to take some money out, pay the penalty. Now, I'm painting the extreme conditions here, but maybe this is where we're at. So for me, unless you're in that position, I would hold tight on your portfolio, on your 401k, on your IRA accounts. I don't get caught up in the mass hysteria of the markets going up and down, because you could see just from this past week, it goes down 2,000, goes up 2,000, goes down 1,500, comes up 750, whatever it is. Just try to let it stay there and don't touch it. Jody, what is your thoughts when it comes to the stock market?
I think you said it best earlier, Paul. The people who get hurt on the roller coaster are the ones who jump off in the middle of it. So unless you must jump, I mean, certainly the people who were planning to retire this month might not be. But if you don't have to jump, just don't jump. Just sit tight. And, that's the least of your worries, I really think, this week. It's the least of your worries. It will come back eventually. It's not going to come back in a month, or maybe even 6 months, or maybe even a year. But take the long-term outlook, like you said. Don't jump off the roller coaster while it's running.
Yep, absolutely. And I think we'll that was well said. And I'm going to jump into our recap, right? So for me, I think we have to stay calm. I keep going back to that. Try to stay as calm as you can. Everyone is different. Everyone has a different level of calmness. And for me, I've been able to, I think, stay calm, once again, I have financial peace, another Dave Ramsey term. So I do have financial peace, and that has helped me with other issues in my life in terms of this crisis. So now battling the fronts of getting the kids to do their homework and for me to keep up and stay in tune with my work, which has been great. It's been pretty seamless for both me and my wife. And also deal with the tedium of being home, because people think it's great that you're home. Oh, I'm home. I don't know. Like, I think people start to get stir crazy. So, we posted a great schedule up on the Financial Dads Facebook page. I think there's a lot of things that could be said there, just kind of breaking up your time to try to space out the day and get some regularity into your life while you're working remotely and dealing with this situation. But I think my overarching statement will be, stay calm, don't panic, things will get better. Jody, what's your take to wrap things up today?
Fully agreed, Paul. Protect yourself. This is the time to listen to the health experts. And remember that when disaster strikes, you got to slow down your decision making. Going back to the stock market thing, right? You don't have to jump. If you're not already financially prepared for a 2-week disruption, please do what you can to start doing that. If you need to go out and stock up on stuff, do a little bit of that. Get your written budget in order. Make sure you start planning. If you feel unprepared, get prepared. Mentally prepare for this. And remember that there are people all around us who are going to be suffering in one way or another, either medically, physically, or financially with their businesses or with their expenses. Small businesses are going to take a hit in this, the pizza shops and the small restaurants and the daycares and the cleaning services. They're all going to take hits. So be mindful of that. Healthcare workers are on the front lines in this. They're literally risking their own lives to take care of other people. So be respectful of those people. Don't go screaming to the pediatrician or screaming to the doctor or screaming to the ER if you don't absolutely have to. And remember that this will pass. Time will march on and things will get better, hopefully. But it's only going to get better if we're smart, if we do the things that are recommended by the health professionals, if we do the things that are best for us as communities. We will move through this, and we will move through this faster. It is up to us to fix this. And above all, everybody, just stay healthy.
Yep. And Jody, I got to say, we usually have our scripted outro, which I'm going to do, because I want to keep in mind that we try to keep some consistency the way we do things. But I really did enjoy and thoroughly enjoyed our discussion today, right? And personally looking forward to the next one. I think for us, this helped me prepare a little better. Hopefully my dialogue with you helped you prepare a little better. Our forced preparedness of looking at different news articles and looking for different the coronavirus map and stuff. So I think we've contributed a lot of great stuff onto the Facebook page this week. So take a look at those pieces, especially the kids' school schedule, the coronavirus map, the 2 articles that we put out there. I think for me, I'm better prepared now that I've done this podcast with you, and I hope that everyone out there who listens to it is a little bit more prepared once they listen to the podcast as well. So thanks everyone for downloading our podcast. If you have any questions or comments, please email us at financialdads@gmail.com or check us out on Facebook. Just go to financialdads.com. So with that, this is Paul and Jody reminding you, managing finances can be stressful, but that's why the Financial Dads are here to help you plan for success. Have a good one, everybody. Be well, and thank you.